Welcome to the RD Squeeze. I'm Mickey,
And I'm Emily.
and we're two dietitian besties here to squeeze out the misinformation around health and nutrition.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the RD Squeeze podcast. It's Emily Fashana, one of your hosts.
And I'm Mickey Orlowski, your other host of the RD Squeeze. Welcome. We're very excited to get into this episode today.
Yes, all about rethinking our eating behaviors.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about intuitive eating, which is sometimes a controversial topic, but hopefully this will help shed some light on the benefits of intuitive eating. So as Emily mentioned in our introduction episode, she is a certified intuitive eating counselor. So this is very much within her wheelhouse. I am just a intuitive eating, health at every size, body positive dietitian, as you can see from my sweatshirt if you're watching on Spotify. My sweatshirt says all bodies are good bodies, and I thoroughly believe that. There is no wrong way to perceive bodies. Great. So very excited for this one.
We're going to dive into the principles of intuitive eating a little bit, just to give you, as a consumer, whether you're a student, dietitian listening, just some background on it so you can understand maybe where some of our future episodes might come from, might lead to. I think as a dietitian, even going into dietetics, I didn't know what this was. I didn't know what intuitive eating was, but probably around when that COVID pandemic hit, that's when this started to come out a little bit more. The body positivity, health at every size, all those things kind of started to really flourish. And that's when it really struck me. Actually, there was a dietitian locally who came to one of our conferences and did a session on her book that she wrote. And I can link that book in the chat as well, give her some little credit. But Julie was her name, I believe, if I'm forgetting. But Julie talked about pretty much like intuitive eating and not going to the refrigerator. Why do we go to the refrigerator for our snacks at nighttime? Or why are we always grabbing that type of food? Why do I always want chips? I'm going to use my example. Why do I always want chips? Like, is there something behind it? And that's where the psychology really comes in. And that's a reason I was really interested in dietetics, was like the eating behaviors. So when this came out, when I went to the session, it just like struck with me. And that's really when the intuitive eating messages were kind of coming out on social media. I learned of the trainings that you could do to become a certified intuitive eating counselor. And where I started was reading the book. And that just really stuck with me. And I was like, this is why I went into dietetics. It's not about the weight you are. It's not about that you're eating the most healthiest of foods, as we talked about in previous episodes. It's about nourishing your body and making sure you're growing up to have a healthy lifestyle and to be able to take your ethnic cuisines that maybe you enjoy and find the joy and nourishment in those, not restricting any foods. I never believed in telling people you can't have this, you can't have that. I don't think I've ever gone into a counseling session, even as a newer dietitian, not really knowing what to tell people sometimes, because that comes with experience. I never went in telling someone what they could or could not eat.
No, I think there's a running joke around most dietitians that say, if you ever come across a dietitian that says, you can't eat this, I don't know where they're coming from, but that's not how most of us perceive food. We perceive food as something that we can enjoy. Now, there's a spectrum of dietitians that may feel one way or the other, but we are very much intuitive eating, no food is off limits, essentially.
Yeah.
And like really just about what we can add to enhance.
Correct. Absolutely. Yep.
Or how can this fit into your lifestyle, but also help you feel nourished and get all the nutrients that you need to be your best self, essentially. Yeah. I don't want to say healthy because that I don't want to like stigmatize that, but like just overall the benefits of that. But before we get into the principles, Emily, do you just want to tell everybody kind of what you went through to become an intuitive eating counselor?
Oh, sure.
Because I think it doesn't just have to be dietitians that do this, which can have positive or negative connotations, but regardless, there is some training involved to become a certified intuitive eating counselor. So you want to talk about that just a little bit, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes.
So the training I did, so it was all like a virtual training. You didn't have to go in person or anything. But again, I read the book. There were some self-study webinars and other materials that you had to do. You had to take a self-study test as well. So really, as I read the book and was going through other things, the questions are laid out for you. So I went through, I answered the questions to be able to pass that test, if you will. You don't have to do it in this order, but then I went on, there's a 6-series pro skills training webinar that you would take. They're an hour and a half each. They might have changed since I've taken it a couple of years ago. But you would take these with the intuitive eating pros. And that is Elise Resch and Evelyn Tribole. And they're based out of, I think, the California area. So they kind of came up with these principles and this way of counseling. And that's really what it is a way of counseling, a way of educating, understanding food behaviors to then provide nutrition recommendations as a dietitian. Again, you said not everyone has to be a dietitian to be an intuitive eating counselor. So the series I went through, there was a psychologist in there were personal trainers in there, I forget what other health professionals, MDs were in there. So there's a variety, really. The list goes on and on. You just need to be a healthcare professional with a credential behind your name. So the list is online. You can go to intuitiveeatingpros.org, I think it is. Yeah. And you can look up if your healthcare profession can be included in becoming a certified intuitive eating counselor. So not just limited to dietitians, to psychologists. I would say those are probably the biggest ones that do go for it. But if you're looking at being able to help your clients, maybe a health coach, I think those were also on the list. If you're looking at helping your clients in a different way, to not have weight bias, to not have diet stigmas and things like that, and be anti-diet, if you will, this is a route to go. So it definitely called me. It was probably because it depended on how long it took me to read a book, and I am not a quick reader at all. Plus you're studying for a test at the same time. So I would say it probably took me 9 months to do the whole thing. After the 6 series skills training, then you do have to go through 3 supervised practice sessions. And again, those were virtual. Mine was in a group setting, but you can do individually with the intuitive eating pros, Evelyn and Elise. So you could do that. And so that then gives you the credential, or really the certificate. It's not an extra credential after my name. It's a certificate program. So there's many certificate programs out there. It makes you be able to focus a little bit more in an area. So I have those basic credentials, and then now this gives me a little bit more of a niche that I can practice in as well. Nice. You don't have to have the certificate, though, to be able to practice intuitive eating, if you will.
Yeah.
It just gives you that deeper understanding. Like I said, it allows you, I think, to use their logo if you're in private practice or want to put it on your business card or something. So it does give you a little up. But as far as anyone being able to do this as a certified health professional that kind of wants to, that's appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's really interesting. And hopefully that's useful to some other potentially students or whoever's looking to get into the profession. Maybe that's of interest to them. So that's great. I love that. I think that's really important to share, just because it is, an extra thing that you went through to give us that little bit of extra experience. And then the reason why, if anybody was watching again, I was looking at the website, because I did have that cited on our little outline here, and it was intuitiveeating.org for just the regular principles. And there's also a ton of studies done on intuitive eating, and on that website.
Over 150 to date.
Yeah, and on that website, there's all those studies. So we'll link that in our description. But yeah, there's so many resources, and this is a proven strategy for counseling. So
yes,
it's really great.
And again, we don't really focus on weight, which we'll get into now. you want me to dive right in?
Yeah, let's get into it.
So, okay, so there's 10 principles of intuitive eating. I'm kind of going to clump a few together, and I'm not going to go in order of what they are because they kind of work together. With the experience I've had, I've done groups that are like 6-week groups, 4-week groups. I've had a psychologist join in the sessions before. It's really beneficial to have those other allied health professionals, as we've promoted so much. Share the wealth. We're not all experts in everything. I would say when I was doing the 6-week class, which I didn't have a psychologist in, I did that for 2 or 3 years. It would have been very beneficial to have a psychologist assigned. So once we did get the psychologist assigned, it was much easier to be able for them to kind of answer those questions rather than me having to be like, I can give you a little info, but I can't, that's not really my scope of practice. Mm-hmm. So that really helps to have that multidisciplinary approach there. So the principles, the first one, which I'll pair with another one, is rejecting the diet culture. And so what this really means is that we are throwing out diet books, food plans, articles that are offering false hope that dieting or food restriction of any kind is going to make you have a better life. So if we're looking at when you're eating, something telling you when to eat, intermittent fasting. If we're looking at what you're eating, ketogenic diet, Atkins diet, things like that, South Beach diet. If we're looking at, so what, when, and how much. Now, okay, there's limitations there, but how much could also be your macros. So if we're looking at those 3 things, that's going to be diet culture. So we want to kind of reject that diet culture and see, why is someone telling me to do that? Where is it coming from? The media and so forth. This then kind of goes with, so that was principle 1, but this also goes with principle number 6, which is challenging our food police. So the dietitians tend to be known as food police, right? Mm-hmm. We get that a lot. Oh, yeah. Here comes the food police.
Yeah, don't judge what I'm eating. Yeah. Don't look at what I'm eating. Don't look at my plate.
Don't look at my cart. Don't, yeah. I don't want you to look. Oh, the dietitian's here. We better get a salad.
Yeah.
So that is in reference to dietitians. However, we are completely the opposite. We are not the food police at all. We want you to nourish your plates and have a variety of foods. Some of the other food police can be your family, your friends. Oh, you have diabetes? You shouldn't be eating that Oreo. That has a lot of sugar in it. Oh, it's your birthday, but you want birthday cake? You can't have that. That's going to cause your, blood sugar to go up. You've been losing so much weight. Don't eat the cake now.
Yeah.
That's the food police. When we hear these comments, can you think of any others?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've heard, I can't eat all that fruit. They see you eating fruit. Oh, I can't eat all that fruit. There's so much sugar in that fruit. Or oh, I'm surprised you didn't order a salad. Or like, this is coming to me as if other people food policing me, and I'm like, listen, I don't do that to you, but or like, God forbid I have a pastry or or I get a Starbucks or a Dunkin' coffee or something like. Oh my God, there's so much sugar in Starbucks or whatever. Like, it's just that constant guilt tripping of what you're eating and the shame of it all.
Yes.
I can't think of like a very specific instance because I just feel like it's always threaded throughout.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A lot of everyday life scenarios. Yeah. Even just like the amount of food you're eating.
Right.
Like I remember, unfortunately, a family member of mine, I was really hungry. I hadn't eaten really all day, and I got a big plate of chicken marsala, and I was like really excited, and I ate the whole thing, and my family member got the same thing, and he had only eaten half, and he was like, wow, you ate all of that. That's like weird. Like you ate so much more than me. And I was like, listen, I was really hungry. I was really looking forward to this, and now you just totally like soured it because you thought because you didn't eat all yours that, I don't know, it was just different. Yeah. So like just even that kind of stuff is just upsetting.
Right. And you have to challenge the food police exactly doing that. No, sorry, I was really hungry. No, I just ran 10 miles earlier and I really need to refuel my body. Mm-hmm. Or you know what? I know I'm not going to eat until later in the day. So I do need to have a snack now. And unfortunately, this is the only food that's available to me. I know it's going to fuel me. So this is why I'm having it. Those are the types of rephrasing and the challenges that we can have with people. going back to maybe the diabetes one, you can't have an Oreo or cake because you have diabetes. Well, you know, it is my birthday and I haven't eaten that much. First off, you shouldn't even have to explain your food choices to anyone. Let's just say that. So you don't necessarily have to do that. But second off, then you can say, you know, so I've planned ahead. I haven't eaten too many carbohydrates today. Maybe I'm giving myself a little more insulin today because it's my birthday and I know my blood sugars are going to be a little higher. It's one day out of the year. It's not a big deal. I can deal with it. It's not going to affect my overall management of diabetes.
Well, even just circling back to the diet culture perspective, like, what is it? 90% of diets don't work, and you usually end up gaining any weight that you lost back, and usually even more.
Yes.
And
correct.
It's because of these, like, there's a vicious cycle where you're dieting and then you're failing. So then you get frustrated and you stop, and then like you almost like binge eat, or like you soiled your diet, so you might as well just go hard and just, you know, really cheat and challenge yourself to eat as much as you can, because then tomorrow it's going to be a whole new day because you're only going to eat salad. That is not realistic, and that restricting does not, like, it's like telling a little kid you can't have it. Well, they want it even more.
Yeah, there's more rebellion going on. Absolutely.
So, yeah, so like just knowing that, like, and like I said, diets don't work because they are not sustainable and you can't stick with them. This, you know, framework gives you a more realistic approach to food and not having this shame and guilt attached to it. So I like the challenge the food police and reject all the diet culture, because I agree. I think that needs to go in the trash can.
Yeah, absolutely. And where do we get it from? We get it from, you know, billboards. We get it from marketing. We get it from social media now, the news. So it comes at us at a lot of different angles, but we do need to kind of face through it, look through that misinformation, as we've talked about. And that's why we're here to share, you know, these are some tips on how to do that. Again, I'm an intuitive eating counselor, so if you're local, I do that. I'm more than happy to help you. But I'm sure many other dietitians do as well. So if you're out in different areas, reach out, ask a dietitian, you know, hey, I've heard about intuitive eating. Do you practice like this? I don't think there's going to be a dietitian who says I can't do that, and if there is, they can most likely refer you to a different dietitian. Again, we have a responsibility that if we're not comfortable and if we're unable or not competent in some area of nutrition and dietetics, to refer to a different dietitian. I like how you kind of brought in that we really should take into consideration what's given to us kind of when we look at our childhood too, because that's happened to me as well, and challenging food police. You shouldn't eat that much. Well, you're telling me to restrict all these foods and then I'm not eating, and now I'm starving.
Or, now this might lead into the next principle, but also, like, I remember I'm getting my PhD and I just did an assignment related to this, where I had to think back about reflecting on, you know, my upbringing and things like that, and how that reflected into some of the concepts of the course. But one of the things I thought of was my parents were poor, working class, growing up. So food waste was not an option. So not only, you know, challenging the food police in that end, but also challenging the food police that you have to sit and you have to finish your meal, or you can't move from the table, or if you don't finish that, we can't let it go to waste. There's starving children in this country, or whatever, or in another country, or whatever. Like, that ruined what intuitive eating is for me, because I felt no matter what I did, I had to finish my plate, regardless if I was full, if I was hungry, if I was overstuffed, I had to finish my plate. And that ruined my hunger cues for a really long time. So I think that kind of relates to that. So if you're a parent, I hate to say it, but if you're doing that to your child, it's not helping. Usually children are the best intuitive eaters because they can tell what they want. They'll tell you what they don't want. Now, sometimes they're picky and they're just being little brats about it sometimes. Like, they just don't want to eat the vegetables or whatever. But who intuitively eats vegetables? Well, we do, believe it or not.
We do.
But regardless, like, challenging that as well. Like, it's not even just the restriction, but it's also the, you can't leave any waste or anything like that. So I don't know if that helps, if you had anything else to cover.
So a lot of time in my groups that I did, I would go through, the Intuitive Eating Pros came out with some great worksheets, and there were all these questions on there based on, what were your family's food rules and behaviors? What are your food rules and behaviors? Do you have to finish your plate when you sit down? Do you have to eat the leftovers? Can you not have leftovers? Can you not finish your plate and have dessert? Or do you have to finish your plate in order to have dessert? Mm-hmm. So these are the things that we actually really visit and try and figure out when it comes to eating behaviors. So that's the basis of these principles, is why are we behaving this way, and what can we do through some examples and activities and worksheets. What can we do to help in those areas? As Mickey mentioned, children are some of the best intuitive eaters. We are born intuitive eaters. So a child knows when to stop breastfeeding, knows when to stop feeding in their bottle. They know that. They know when they're full and they're satisfied. Forcing a child to continue to feed is not going to help their hunger and fullness cues. It's going to mess them up. Telling a child they have to finish their plate, they have to have this food at a certain time of the day, or a certain, you have to have this snack, you have to have dinner, and you have to finish your peas before you can have dessert. Those are going to cause rebellion. They're going to cause a child to then assume that anytime they do something maybe you ask, that then they are rewarded. And rewarding with food is one of the worst behaviors we can do, because then it becomes a habit. And habits are very hard to break. If we've created that habit at 4 years old and you finish your plate every night, you get dessert until you're 30 years old, do you know how hard that's going to be for a 30-year-old to break? Or vice versa. You mentioned food security and yes, having to eat food on your plate. But then there's the opposite end of, I don't know when I'm going to get food again. Yeah. I'm going to take all this food. I might not eat it because I'm not feeling hungry.
That's a good point.
And I've worked with some people who they're like, I just don't eat because I'm not hungry. Well, you're not hungry because you never were able to cue in, or you had to ignore your hunger signal because you were food insecure and you didn't have access to food.
That brings up such a good point, because I have two life experiences that I can relate to this. So one of them is relating back to the first principle first thing that you were talking about. I have a family member as well who they were, again, working for class, and food insecurity was kind of on the horizon for them, but they had food, but now as an adult, they actually are food hoarders. So that if it's on sale, they'll buy a ton, they'll freeze it, and then it ends up going to waste because they don't end up using it, or they buy too much, or if you're at a party and there's a cookie tray or something and you can pack that up. I know bridal showers in this area do that. They have a dessert table.
Yeah.
Well, they take so much that they don't actually end up eating it, and then it ends up going bad, or they don't finish it all, or whatever, or they don't even like it. People will take food that they don't actually like, but they just feel the obligation to take it, which again, that also comes down to even holidays. I remember people talking to me about oh, you love yams, and I actually hated yams, but I felt obligated to take that because I felt guilty because they had made them special for me.
Yeah.
That also kind of screws with everything that you're doing.
Yep.
And then also, this is me personally, as a kid, a lot of times if I didn't eat something, I think also because I was a little bit, as we mentioned, in a bigger body, I wasn't allowed to have certain foods. So when I had access to them, I would actually hoard them, which I don't think you know this about me. I would hoard them because I thought I wouldn't be able to get them. Sure, and I would just kind of, if I can get it now and I can hide it and shame eat. Sure. I laugh because thinking of a show, but I'm shame eating. And like I said, because I'm not accepted to have that food, it's perceived as bad or guilty or whatever. And that all kind of ties into this as well. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And food security is one of those things where if I'm like hearing someone listening to them, counseling them, I'm like, ooh, there was some food security going on there, or just access to food. So maybe not, and that ties into food security, but just the access to food. So there might be people, and I'm just thinking of members in like the service, the military, who like, you don't know when you're going to eat next. So like, you're going to eat as much as you can in your 5 to 10 minute time period. You're not acknowledging your hunger signals or your fullness signals. Your hunger signals might be so high. Yeah. That's also why you're eating so much. Yeah. And you don't know your fullness because you don't know when you're going to eat again, or you ignore your fullness because of that.
That's a good point too. Even like, I'm again speaking from personal experience, but even just like in a restaurant setting, like, we didn't get breaks. Like, you don't get breaks in restaurants. I'm sorry. Maybe you do, but in the restaurants I did, you didn't get breaks. So you ordered your food and you shoved as much as you could in 5 minutes, and then that was like your break. And then you waited your tables, and then you came back and you shoved more in. And like, maybe I was or wasn't hungry, but that was the time I could eat. Yeah. But also then like thinking about people who are on like second or third shifts. Correct. Or nurses or doctors or whoever has like a weird work time, like
not a normal 9 to 5 work hour.
You might have to eat dinner at 4 a.m. because that's the time that you get your dinner break, and you're not really hungry, or that's not really what you want to have at that time, but you have to eat
force
it.
Yourself to.
So like there's a ton of factors that can affect this, even things that like we can't control. Yeah. So I think that's a good way to put it, and thinking about having available options if you can, like in case you are feeling one type of way, like maybe you really want something salty, which again, I think we're going to get into more of the principles too, but like have a salty snack, have a sweet snack, just have those options in case that's what you're feeling like.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's touch on like the hunger, the fullness, the satisfaction. So those are actually 3 principles. Honor your hunger. Then we're going to discover our satisfaction factor and feel our fullness. So I kind of group those all together. Now, obviously honoring our hunger and feeling our fullness are 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. When we honor our hunger, we're acknowledging the physical feeling of our stomach. So just like we know when we have to go to the bathroom, same thing for hunger. And fullness. We need to acknowledge when we're feeling that. And so here's what happens. A lot of times our stress response is so high. This is how I like to explain it. Our stress is so high, whatever stress you're in, whether it's because you're so fast paced and going, you don't have time to relax, whether it's you literally have stress going on in your life from a condition, from other sources happening, whatever it might be. That stress response, I like to explain it as putting up a brick wall in between being able to feel your fullness and honor your hunger. When our stress response is lower and we're able to relax, have self-care, be in tune with our body, we can acknowledge our hunger. We can acknowledge our fullness. Another way I like to explain it, you're so busy all day long, you finally get home, you sit on the couch, and you're just like, oh, I'm thirsty. Oh, I'm hungry now. Oh my God, I'm so tired. You're finally able, from that stress response being reduced, to listen to your body and be in tune with it. So that's one of the biggest things I focus on, is that we need to reduce our stress in our life so we can be able to listen to our body and understand what it's telling us. So with our hunger, are we getting so hungry that we're eating the kitchen cupboard and like not stopping? So then our fullness signal is completely ignored.
Or, I'm sorry, just to add to that, or we're grabbing whatever we can and not being conscious of what our body really needs. Yes. And maybe we're reaching for the quick, easy, high-calorie food, which again, if that's what your body is saying you want, then obviously grab that. But sometimes it's out of desperation. We're not actually taking...
We're not listening.
Right, we're not listening, so we're just grabbing whatever's available to fill the void.
Yeah, what we think is what we want.
Right.
So then that's where the satisfaction comes in. So I mentioned earlier, like our culinary or cultural cuisines that we might come from. And so if you're Italian, you're from the Middle East, you're from Asia, whatever, we want to include those in satisfying our taste buds. And that's the biggest thing. You mentioned this earlier too, with the salty, the sweet. Our body knows what it wants. Our body knows if it wants fruits and vegetables. we might confuse sweet with fruit because we always go to chocolate for convenience reasons.
Or like a gummy.
Yeah, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So instead of going for the gummy, the sweet
chocolate
item, the chocolate, go for a piece of fruit. See how that fruit is. Maybe it's a yogurt that has fruit in it. Yes, nutritionally, you might all be saying, it's got too many sugars. Hey, when we're talking about food security, easy access, people who have weird shifts for work, that is a go-to. Because you know what? It's food access, and it's nourishing your body, and it's nutrients.
Yeah, and
we can worry about added sugars later.
And also, that's satisfying. I mean, comparing an apple, just an apple, to a yogurt that maybe has fruit on the bottom, okay? An apple can be just as nourishing, and so can a yogurt. But the yogurt is also going to have fat, protein. There's going to be maybe a different texture, whatever. That can also be a different spectrum of satiety and satisfaction, because maybe you don't want something crunchy, maybe you want something a little soft and creamy because you're craving ice cream. Well, also, again, have the ice cream, have the frozen yogurt, have whatever you want, but like, think about what you're actually wanting. Like you said, the sweet stuff, that might be you want fruit, or you might want ice cream. Like, and that's okay, that's totally fine. We're eliminating that guilt out of it too. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of
absolutely. And I think a lot of people, when they hear these things, are like, so you're telling me I can have ice cream anytime? No, what we need to do is learn what our body really wants in the moment. And if we're not eating certain nourishing foods and we incorporate that, we might find that, wow, this whole time I wanted vegetables. This whole time I wanted cheese with an apple. I didn't want an apple with caramel and, all this stuff. I just needed protein with it. So we want to acknowledge, this is the biggest term I use through my classes and support groups, is the time you take to just sit back and acknowledge, what's my body saying right now? What do I want? Yeah. That is the most important thing you can do to further then explore why you're behaving that way.
A prime example I can think of this, and I don't think it's just me, because I've heard a lot of people say this, but I don't know about you, but after I've been like away from home for a while, or I'm traveling, especially when I was out of the country for a little while, you're indulging in a lot of like rich foods because you're eating out all the time. So it's not something that you normally have on the daily. So you're not in your normal routine. I'm always like, okay, what do I want when I come home? I always want a big salad, or I want a lot of vegetables. Like the one time I was coming home from out of the country when I was studying abroad, my mom was like, well, what do you want your, homecoming dinner to be? And I was like, I want a big salad and fruit. Like, get me a ton of fruit, because I just wasn't eating that.
Yeah.
But think about it too. Like, when you're traveling, usually your immunity's low. You're eating those more rich foods, more maybe necessarily like fat-driven foods, which is, again, fine. They're delicious. Like, what your immunity's low, like you're probably not as hydrated. Right. So like there's different cues there to say like, that's why you want those things.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a little, I don't know however people is like, but when you're traveling, you're a little constipated.
Your GI system.
Your GI system's all out of whack, so you just want to poop. Like, you just want some veggies to clean you out. Like, whatever the reason is, I don't think I'm the only person with that concept, absolutely. But just like, that's another example.
And that's the thing. When you travel, any person I've had come in for counseling, I've said, go enjoy your food. Like, you're going on a cruise, you're going to this place, that place, go enjoy your food. Like, it's okay. Recognize if you've been eating potatoes and meat the whole time, and maybe add a side salad in. Maybe instead of getting the fries every single night, maybe throw a vegetable in there, or get it on the side, just to switch it up, but still include the foods and enjoy them while you're on vacation.
Well, even if you're going out to dinner with like a spouse for like an anniversary, or like, I remember, I hate to like throw them under the bus, but we planned this big party to go to this like cooking show that's pretty local, and one of somebody I know, I'm not going to throw them under the bus, somebody I know was like, oh, I can't eat all that because I'm on my diet or whatever. I'm like, you spent all this money on this dinner and you're not even going to eat it? Like, what is the point of that? Enjoy it. You're never going to have it again. What, like, even if you were dieting, which I do not condone, but even if you were, like, you spent all that money on that. Why would you waste that opportunity and that experience? That just doesn't make any sense to me. The experience,
again, the satisfaction that comes with it, your body's going to tell you what you want and what satisfies you. I bring up this example too. Other cultures, they might eat higher fat foods, higher sugar foods, more often than we have available, I will say, or at least I'm thinking of France. I'm just going to put them out there. You've got your baguettes, you've got your croissants, all that stuff.
It's delicious.
It's delicious. Do you see that how their lifestyle is, though? They go and have an hour or two lunch. They relax while they're eating. They're not in a rush. They enjoy their food. They pay attention to their hunger and fullness cues. They are enjoying themselves with company, with relationships. That's an important part of stress. Are we getting the relationships we need? Are we having that time? Or are we always go, 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 and we don't have time for self-care, including being with friends or family or whoever it might be? Their lifestyle's totally different. They walk more places, bike more places, have to get to the train station or whatnot. Their lifestyle's very different. So, unfortunately, in the United States, lifestyle might not change as easily, right? Or maybe if you don't live in a big city, you don't have things like that. So then we have to find, okay, how can I slow down a little bit? Can I go and walk away from my desk at lunch? No matter where you work, at home, can you walk away from that and give yourself the 30 minutes, hour, whatever you might have, 15 minutes even, can you give yourself time to sit and relax and do that without any distractions? That's how we're going to tune in to our satisfaction, to our hunger, to our fullness sensations by reducing the stress response that we're in. So those are a couple that I think kind of flow together. Another big one I find with intuitive eating is our principle about coping with our emotions with kindness. And we don't realize how much our emotions can affect our eating behaviors. You know, do you sit on the couch because you're bored and grab the bag of potato chips? Do you do it because it's habit? Do you do it because you're lonely? Do you do it because there's a missing piece somewhere and you're not getting, again, that desirability? You're not enhancing your personal goals, your desires, your passions. Is there something missing? And are we filling that void with food? So emotions can play a big thing. I use something called the bored jar. So I have people write down between 4 to 8 things that they could do when they're bored, if you will, and go do those things. Whether it's a handcraft, crocheting, singing, dancing, playing a guitar. Maybe it is, turn on a TV show or something to distract you. Most people, that doesn't distract in a non-eating behavior way. Could you go on a walk? Could you take your dog on a walk? Can you call a friend? You know, those types of things. Can we do something with our hands maybe? Maybe it's our hands that need to be doing something. And can we distract ourselves?
I think also kind of from a neurodivergent standpoint too, me in particular, and I think other neurodivergent people, we tend to also use food as a stimulation. So I find myself reaching for food when I'm bored, but also like if I'm trying to concentrate, if I'm trying to get through something that's kind of boring in terms of like work, I'll reward myself with like a candy or something just to keep my focus up, which isn't, again, not the best thing to do, but also I know that that can help me be more focused. And so it doesn't necessarily always mean a bad thing. I do think, you know, that can you can't use that as the excuse all the time. Like, you know, do you really need to sit and eat candy while you're watching a show? Like, probably not. But like, if it's something that you're not looking forward to, like I use this as a study tactic for students who have trouble studying for like the RD exam. You know, after 20 minutes, go eat, you know, your favorite snack. Reward yourself with like the treat that you want. Or that also could be a reward in terms of like going for a walk, stepping away. So
read a book that you enjoy or something.
So doing something you enjoy or enjoying a food is not necessarily a bad thing either. So
no, you're right. Absolutely.
So yes, it also could be, you know, are you just bored? Are you just looking to fill the void? Or can we use this as a motivator as well too?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. I think we see more of the other realm, but I
for
think
sure.
Definitely an area that I probably haven't thought of before. And that's a great insight to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, from a counselor's perspective, then, is there a neurodivergent diagnoses? And, and sometimes you're going to know that, sometimes you're not.
Right.
And again, is it filling a void, maybe with anxiety, depression, stress? Or is it a coping mechanism to help, which I hate to say, help fit the norm of what society expects neurodivergent people to do? Because I think productivity, like working 8 hours a day, that's also not something that, people can do regularly like that. But regardless, it's something to get you through. Like I said, is it the best thing? No, but at least it's something that can help cope with that other stress, because that is a stress,
absolutely too. And that's where, like, a psychologist I would pull in and be
for sure,
that's where I need psychology. And this is the principle it's principle number 7 that the psychologist gets the most involved with, is the emotions, because they're diving into those emotions and why it's happening. Not necessarily scope of practice for a dietitian. It's something that, hey, you brought that up. I think that might be an area. Why don't I refer you to the therapy?
Exactly.
So they can.
Yeah. And like I said, there's probably better coping mechanisms to have, but definitely it could be something that works for somebody and, can be a calming mechanism. So yeah, 100% that is definitely not within our scope.
But again,
if you see that, that's something you can be aware of.
Absolutely. So we have a couple more principles. Respecting our body is number 8. And obviously, as Mickey's sweatshirt says, all bodies are good bodies. So, we really want to make sure that our messages are not that a skinny body is the only good body and healthy body. There's no good or bad to this. And we try not to even use good and bad in our terminology when we counsel. Like, we really just shouldn't use that. We want to look at, how are we talking to ourselves? If we're not comfortable in our body's not going to change overnight. And we got here over time, maybe. If you do have a higher body weight, you didn't get here overnight. There were behaviors that led to this. Maybe there are medical conditions that led to it. And so it's respecting some of those things and saying, you know what? Okay, I'm here right now. I don't feel comfortable in my clothes. I think that means maybe I need to go buy some new clothes. Now, yes, that is also privilege, because if you don't have money to go buy clothes, yes, you are stuck in your clothes. So how can you make yourself feel a little bit better about yourself? By having positive thoughts, rethinking, reframing negative thoughts, and changing that tone to yourself. Just as you would talk to a friend, maybe not all family members, but family members, how would you talk to them? You want to talk to yourself that same way. So how can we put those positive, body respectful comments to ourselves and change that thought?
Well, and I think that also brings up a good point too, that just because someone's in a bigger body doesn't mean they're unhealthy. And just because someone's in a thinner, smaller body does not mean they're also healthy.
Yep.
I mean, eating disorders, disordered eating, that can also lead to...
There's no look.
There's no look for that. And then, so B being, you don't want to comment on other people's bodies as well. Because, like, when you're thinking about talking about another person's body, right? You don't know what they're going through.
No.
You don't know if they're trying to lose weight or they are trying to gain weight, or what stress they're going through, if they're depressed, if they're anxious, or maybe they're going through an illness that's affecting their appetite, or they can't exercise, or whatever the case may be. Refrain from commenting on people's bodies, because that also then adds more stigma, more shame regarding appearances, which, I mean... Think about how often, I mean, unless you're commenting on, like, maybe the beauty of somebody.
Sure.
And, like, maybe you look really good.
Hair color, makeup.
Whatever, like, or just refrain from the compliments about appearance in general, because it might be something someone's self-conscious about. But again, like, not saying that hair color, eye color, whatever, that's not something that, is immediately going to change or anything. But just be cognizant of that. And if someone commented that to you, how would you feel?
Right.
especially maybe you're going through something, and like if you're really stressed and you gained weight and someone said, oh wow, you really gained a lot of weight, again, not that that's a bad thing, but I'm sure you would feel self-conscious about it and embarrassed or whatever.
Well, yeah, and especially if you look back on someone's history, so mine and yours, for example. If someone said, wow, you've gained weight, that would put a lot of negative thoughts into my mind because of my weight bias when I was younger.
And we've been conditioned that for years to feel shame around weight gain.
Right.
Which I think we should transition that to a different mindset, which is, again, we've been conditioned. We've had these habits. That's a habit that we can't change. But I would be so upset if someone said that to me, and not because it's a bad thing, it's just I know it would trigger some different feelings for me.
And I'm going to bring this up too. You know, we're at childbearing age, both of us, and there have been comments that I have gotten about, are you pregnant right now? And it's like, no, I just have a health condition that has led me to gain weight. And
that happened to me once.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of a 8th or 9th grade class speaking, and the one girl goes, are you pregnant? I was not pregnant. And I had to tell them, no, I'm not. And I was like, you never want to comment on that.
So unfortunately, like now you as the person who made the comment, you're probably like, oh, and having very negative, thoughts about what you just said.
Yeah.
So going back to your point of don't comment on people's weight. Don't comment on their body at all. A better thing to say is, hey, it's so nice to see you. You look so happy. Or like, it's great to see you. Rather than comment on someone's
or you look so good.
Because what that does is, as we've said, is it creates this connotation that weight means you're worthy.
Right.
And you are not. There is nothing about worthiness that correlates to your weight.
Yeah, and I think that also ties into the body respect principle. So, other principles do we want to get into?
There's a couple more. So, movement of the body. So, instead of us saying physical activity, exercise, we move our bodies. As we age, as people are unable to do certain activities, maybe with conditions, disabilities, we move our body in ways we can and ways we enjoy. You mentioned you don't like running, so you're not going to run. And like, I'm not going to sit here and say, Mickey, you have to go run. Mickey, you have to go to the gym. Even that, people sometimes when you say gym or fitness center, it causes anxiety. It causes them to be like, I know, nope, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. I'm not going there.
The gym can be intimidating for a lot of people, especially if you don't know what you're doing or you're just starting out. And then, we have social media where people video people maybe not doing the right thing in the gym.
That's not your place.
No, it's...
People are trying to go there to be healthier.
Right.
And to get
or just feel better.
Feel better. Yep.
Cardiovascular health.
So we can't be doing comments like that, posting things like that, because someone's trying to better their lifestyle and they're there doing their best. And so what if they're not lifting the appropriate way? I mean, I have an exercise science background. I know how people should lift and whatnot, but you know what? I don't care. You made it here. Great for you. But that's where movement of the body comes in of like, okay, are you actually doing also intentional movement? So just getting up and walking around and just kind of doing random things throughout the house maybe, or walking around your neighborhood even, maybe just to take the dog out. Taking the dog out needs to be intentional in that you're moving your body. Not just, oh, I'm going to go take the dog for a little walk and then just kind of like not think about the walk, because you putting your attention to that activity allows you to actually get more benefit from that as well. So we do want to pay attention to our exercise and be intuitive with our movement, but we have to do it in a way that works for us. If walking's your way, great. Maybe you can move faster. Maybe you can go up a hill if that works for you. Maybe you go longer. Maybe you do more intentional walks during the day so you get the benefit of that movement.
Yeah. And then sometimes your body's going to say, and you're going to intuitively know that my body does not want to exercise today. Or if you're sick and you have a headache or you have a stomach ache or whatever, but you're like, oh, I really should go move my body or I really should go exercise. You're not listening to your body. It needs rest is what it needs. And if you have that guilt or shame for not moving, that also is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Right,
and like,
right.
There's a fine line between, like I said, wanting to move your body, enjoying the movement, looking forward to it, rather than begrudgingly getting up and getting off the couch and doing something because you don't want to, but you feel obligated to do it. There's a big difference.
Yeah, and that's the social media of, if you don't wake up at 5 a.m. and do your exercise,
that'll be the day for me.
You know, again, putting those connotations out there of this is what we have to do. No, it's not. You have to do what works for you and your lifestyle. So many people today, and those of you listening, probably have a very busy lifestyle. You're not waking up any earlier than you need to because you already have to be where you need to be early on. You're worried about meal planning or breakfast, and if you do those other things, oh, there's no chance you're doing that. So it has an effect on everything else too. What's going to work for you? That's where SMART goals come in on, like, how can we make this specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic for your life, and then timely of like, okay, do this in the next month, like figure it out, not in a week. That's not going to happen. Movement needs to be realistic for you. It needs to be enjoyable, and that can change. I used to love doing high intensity classes. I don't love it anymore. Do I enjoy it once in a while? Yeah, I miss it, but I'm never going to say like I'm going back to doing that every day because my body found out it was stressed the whole time it was doing that. I wasn't recovering well. I wasn't sleeping well. I had muscle strain. It wasn't going to work for me, and I couldn't recover any better than I was. So I said I had to take a step away from that. I had to do more calm, stress reducing activity, and you have to find what works for you.
And I think just, kind of summing that up too, it also depends on listening to your body in terms of like what you're able to do. Like, if you have joint pain, you are not going to want to do a high intensity level workout. Like, you are going to want to maybe do something a little low impact or more relaxing. And that's okay to listen to, and you shouldn't feel guilty for not being able to do a high intensity workout. And props to people who can, and props to people who run marathons or whatever, and that's what you enjoy, so you do that. But there should be no obligation related to movement either,
right? Just
like there should be no obligation to certain foods, how you should eat. So all right, we're coming down to the wire, right?
The last two. So I put these two last. Well, gentle nutrition is our last one, honoring our health with gentle nutrition. We've touched on it a little bit. We obviously know we have to nourish our body and give our body the right nutrients. We should follow my plate and balance our plates out and have portions. So that's the gentle nutrition. It also flows into then our diagnoses if we have medical conditions and things like that that need certain medical nutrition therapy for that. That's gentle nutrition. That's where a dietitian would come in and focus on that. So yes, if you have diabetes, it's not about you can't have Oreos and cake. It's about how can we include those in your diet so that way when you do want it, your blood sugars don't go up. Or can we have a lower portion of it? Can we maybe not have the whole pack of Oreos and have 2 Oreos? That is gentle nutrition. As we mentioned earlier, it's not about eliminating foods and restricting foods. It's about finding a healthy relationship with food to have unconditional permission to eat the food. And that's then kind of the last principle that I go to, even though it's principle number 3, is making peace with food. If there are foods, now, there's 2 points to this. If there are foods that you want to make peace with, and I'll use chips as an example because that's my example. I want to make peace with chips. I want to be able to eat chips, eat a couple, eat a handful, and be good and have that satisfaction because I enjoy chips, whatever it might be. Can we get there? Can we practice some of these other principles to get there? Can I honor my satisfaction of chips, eating one by one, tasting the food, and acknowledging when I don't enjoy the taste anymore? That's my stopping point. If I do that more and more, I know after 10 or so chips or 15 or whatever it is, that's a good portion. I'm controlling my chip. I'm not eating half the bag anymore. I'm eating 10 or 15 chips. Great. That's an improvement.
Which is sometimes closer to the serving size than what we're normally consuming, which I don't know if this is part of it too, but also like, I know it's not, but like sometimes portioning out your food instead of, and like, so you can visually see it is sometimes like has a negative connotation because it's like, oh, we have to portion out our food to limit what we're eating. That's not what I mean. What I mean is smell it, see it. So you're not blindly just eating it so you can enjoy it. Like, I mean, prior to this episode, we kind of had a little bit of a nosh, a little snack.
Yeah.
And you had it all on plates, and we didn't finish everything, but we were just like picking at what we wanted because we needed a break, and we were chatting and catching up on other things. And, you know, we stopped and we ate what we wanted and what we didn't. And it was nice to see like what was available, what I could eat, what I didn't want anymore. And I think that's okay. So not necessarily portioning out because you're limiting your food, but just like I can see how much I ate, how much I enjoyed. And like you said, with chips, making peace with, yeah, maybe I portioned out a little bit of chips in a bowl and now I'm full and I'm okay and I've enjoyed that. Or nope, you know what? I didn't feel that craving. I still want to eat a little bit more. Like I want a couple more, and that's okay to do that as well. And just honoring, you know, that fullness. And like even when you said I didn't want any more. Like sometimes when you're eating a meal, you know, like this, I'm not enjoying this anymore because not even just because you're full, because it's not something you enjoyed, or maybe you mistook one of your intuitive cues. Like a lot of times I've like ordered something and I'm like, oh, that sounds really, really good. And it's like,
example.
oh, I'm sorry.
No,
but like I've ordered something and I'm like, I really didn't want this.
I wanted the other thing that I was thinking of.
Yeah. I should have went with that instead, or whatever. And like, so you don't end up eating it, but you're still hungry by the end of it. Right. But you just didn't really want that in the first place.
Yeah. You know, you went with the salad instead of the, you know,
burger and fries, let's say.
Fries. Yeah. But your body and taste buds wanted the burger and fries. Maybe you did exercise, move more earlier in the day. Yeah. Maybe you just haven't had foods like that in a while, and that's kind of your restriction, I'll say.
Or maybe you haven't had a lot of carbs and you need a little bit more extra carbs towards the end of the day, or like,
and your body's telling you.
My mom and I always joke like we crave red meat at certain times of the like the week or the month or whatever. Yeah. Because we're like, we need to feed our blood. Like we need more iron or whatever. Like and that's what we want because we need that. So maybe I didn't want the chicken Caesar salad because it didn't have the red meat that I wanted at the time or whatever.
Yep, exactly. So there's so many factors. So before I say the other area of making peace with food, there's so many factors though that come with this intuitive eating. It's not just one thing. It's not you have to go through all the principles of intuitive eating. There might be one area you focus on and that's it. There might be an area you have to focus on before you can get to another area. So those are things that we work on, that I work on with my clients. So then the other area of making peace with food is some people can make peace with certain foods. There might be foods that you're just like, you know what? I really don't know if I enjoy ice cream that much. Like, I know if I buy it, I'm going to sit there and eat the whole gallon. And there's nothing right now that I'm going to be able to do to control that behavior. So I just need to not buy it at this point. That's a time where we say, okay, maybe there's a future time for making peace with that food. Maybe you've made peace with other foods right now. And that's okay. So everyone is individual with this. Everyone kind of has to take certain pieces of it and make it work for their lifestyle.
Yeah. Awesome.
So it's very in-depth. I love it though, because again, it gets into the psychology, the behaviors behind everything, and it gets people thinking about things they never thought about with food.
Oh yeah. I can't imagine how many people who will listen to this episode and think, I never thought of that, or I didn't even make that connection. And I think this is such an important topic to talk about. I'm so glad we got to cover it, you know, early on in our journey. And, you know, I'm sure it'll creep into other episodes for sure. But ideally, these are things that like go back to just like our primal instincts, and like people who are like super into like getting back to that primal instinct of like, you know, what we used to be back in the, you know, whatever years, prehistoric, whatever, I don't know. But like, this is part of that. Like, and I don't think people recognize that. Like, people back then were very intuitive to what they wanted to eat. Now, obviously, they didn't have access to foods we have access to now. But regardless, it is getting to know your body, honoring your body, and overall just respecting that you can trust your body and build that trust up with your body, and don't let all these outside factors affect what you're doing to choose what you know is best for you. So any last thoughts before we get into our sweet and sours? And
no, I think we covered lots. And if you have any questions or comments in the intuitive eating realm, please don't hesitate to put them in our comment box and let us know. Reach out to us. We're happy to cover anything else on this.
Yeah, if you want more follow-up, if you want us to go into more detail about anything, if you are interested in us having a guest about intuitive eating, because I definitely think we know a lot of other people that could contribute to this topic specifically. We have a wealth of network of people, so I think that's something we might tease a little bit in terms of our season 2 or 3. We might start having some guests, which is very exciting. So if you have any other questions, or if something was unclear, let us know. We can clarify it. But yeah, so do you want to start finishing up this episode? I feel like this one is a little bit longer than our usual ones.
That's okay.
But we'll end on our sweet and sour.
Okay.
Do you want to do sweet, sour? Do you want to...
We'll do our sour first.
I like to end on the sweet note.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't like to end on a sweet note? Even with intuitive eating, I always like to end on a sweet note, even if it's just like a little something sweet. Like, I just feel like that ends the thing, so...
Yeah. Okay, sour note is... I think right now, I had to write it down because I always forget the sours. Where we're at, and we'll talk about this in future episodes, just like in general, we touched on this, I think, in our first episode, but in general with like nutrition and policy, we're still not yet at the preventative arena of focusing on that, and how dietitians can play such a pivotal role in preventing disease, which is going to control healthcare costs, which is going to prevent hospitalizations and other medical conditions that are such high costs in our medical arena. So that's my sour, is that we need to do better on health policy from a dietitian standpoint, but in general, people understanding how much diet and nutrition and activity and wellness does affect these conditions.
Yeah, I think my sour is a little similar to yours, in a way that I've been noticing a lot in social media groups and stuff, a lot of dietitian groups. There's been an influx of dietitians who are recommending pseudoscience, which is very irritating to me, or even just like other influencers, people who have maybe a prominent name in like the health, food, wellness type culture, just really marketing pseudoscience or just spreading misinformation. And I know this is the aim of our podcast, to kind of get rid of some of that, but it is very frustrating because I want us to all be on the same page, and it is very hard to take a profession seriously if even those in our own profession are kind of marketing pseudoscience. So that to me is very frustrating. I've seen a lot of clapbacks and things like that at these people, and I do want to have a respectful conversation, but also I'm like, you have an evidence science-based degree. How do you not see the problem with this? So that to me is a little frustrating, and I'm a little sour on that right now. But how about your sweet?
My sweet,
maybe the upcoming live little thing you might do.
Yeah,
is that a good one for you?
Yeah, because I never remember these things. I never have good ideas.
Yeah, this might be like a episode part 2 at some point.
Yeah, so this will air after this, but we're gonna go out live on our podcast.
I will not be.
Okay, that's okay. I'm gonna go out live. Maybe I'll have another sous chef, I'll call him.
Your husband.
But we're going to be going live with the podcast soon, so that'll be out. You'll hear this after, but stay tuned for our live. Maybe we'll have more in the future.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't go. I have a prior commitment. If you listen to the past episode, I will be priorly committed to that. So go listen to that. But yeah, so I'm very excited. I mean, I'll be there in spirit, and it'll be a fun time. Yeah. And I'm very sad I'm missing it. But
I know I am too. But it's all right.
I know it was a bummer. I was like, ugh. Like I took on this thing, and I was like, oh, this will be great. I don't have a lot of stuff going on, and then I was like, just kidding. I have tons of stuff going on. But regardless, so my sweet, I haven't told you this yet, so I'm going to tell you now, which I hope I get to do it. I still hope I get to do it. I'm waiting kind of on a couple things, but I have been invited to speak at our AME this year. Yeah. I've made a speaker proposal, and nice. I intend on signing it. I just have to make sure that I don't have to go to the NDEP meeting that's at the same time. So I just have to make a little extra effort to figure that out. But regardless, I hope to be speaking, and it'll be a leadership type of session. So, and I think AME is in March this year, so hopefully we both can go, and we can also do a little bit of some fun podcasting stuff. So that'll be fun. So that's kind of like a suite. So yeah, just doing lots of fun stuff in our profession. I'm excited.
Wonderful. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right. We'll close up our episode.
Yeah, I think we're ready to close up, but as you know, please like, follow, share, all the fun things. Please continue to listen. Please reach out to us if you have any topics that you want to hear about, if you have questions that you want us to address. I think that's something else that we want to cover at one point, is if we get more following and more question inquiries. We would love to, answer questions and just prepare for that. So yeah. And then otherwise we have episodes coming out every Sunday. So our freshly squeezed episodes on Sunday come out.
Yay.
So thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
And this is probably one of my favorite episodes. We only have a few more left in the season. And yeah.
We'll see you next time. Okay. Thanks,
Bye.
Mickey. Bye, everyone.
Be sure to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. We will always take topics you want to hear about, so message us for any topics you want to see covered on the RD Squeeze. Don't forget, it's Dietitian with a T. We'll see you next time on the RD Squeeze.